Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are at the final destination of our Eternal Weekend preparation videos on our Road to Eternal Weekend feature. The final deck in my series of 10 is going to be this Painter's Servant combo deck. Now there are two builds of Painter's Servant, but this is by far the most common build. So I thought I'd play the most common build for you because that'll give you a better idea of what the deck generally looks like. But there is one that is mono red that looks a lot closer to a mono red stompy deck. So the aim of the game here is mainly to have Painter's Servant in play, which makes everything one colour. Then you Grindstone, because all the cards in the library are one colour, you just mill out that whole deck, and that's basically it. But we have lots of other nice mid-rangey stuff going on here. So we have Fable the Mirror Breaker and the One Ring as some nice engines that we can do a whole bunch of stuff with. We have Engineer and Welder, which allow us to keep welding in and out things like Phyrexian Dragon Engine to keep drawing cards, or Chaos Defiler to blow up all of our opponent's things. We can obviously turn our own One Ring off if we need to. We've got a bunch of Pyroblast, which are just pretty good in the meta right now anyway. But we've got 6 of them, and they go really nice with Painter's Servant because it gives us a 1-mana counterspell / Vindicate instant speed. These builds used to have a lot of fast mana, but they've kind of shied away from that lately, and they're leaning more into things like Vexing Bauble. So they've got some ways of stopping free spells, whether that's from combo decks or it's going to be counter magic. We've got 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate in the main decks, so Soulguard Lantern and Ghost Vacuum, both of which can be found from our Urza Saga. So we have this like mid-range beatdown plan that is also perfectly viable to win games with as well. Our mana base, a whole bunch of mountains, only 2 Great Furnace. There's so much like artifact hate in the form of Null Rod style cards that playing more than 2 of these is often considered a bit of a risk, which is a shame because you sometimes don't have enough artifacts to weld in my experience. But we'll see how it goes. We've also got Ancient Tomb, City of Traitors, and we have this Arena of Glory that we can use to get a hasty Engineer or Welder, which can be absolutely clutch. That's pretty much what we're doing. There's a lot of moving parts, so it's quite an interesting one to play. And not the easiest deck to just pick up either. I've had a few leagues of Painter, but I'm by no means any expert. If you would like to watch an expert, I suggest you check out LIGHTWALKER'S videos. I will put a link in the description, but they make some really good Painter's Servant content. In fact, they make exclusively Painter's Servant content, and I would highly recommend it if you're interested in the deck. One thing I have considered about this deck when I played a league earlier as a practice was my Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer felt like they were catching a lot of strays with all the Graveyard Hate in the format right now. So I would often end up with Welders not being able to do anything and just being a 1-mana 1/1, which is obviously way below the power level of what we need for Legacy. So that's something I'm going to be looking at today. Also making sure that we have enough artifact count that we're happy doing our things. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I can't guarantee I'm going to be playing this optimally like an expert with a deck would, but I'll do my very best for you. In the sideboard, we have some Blood Moon effects of varying stripes. We've got some Graveyard Hate. We've got some removal in the form of a Braid. We've got Fiery Confluence, Fury, Pith Needle as another thing we can get off our as a Saga, and a Disruptor Flute, and obviously another Red Blast, because when they're good, why not have 7? Alright, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to become a YouTube member, for just £1 a month, you get to see my content early. And I do appreciate all of my members helping me pay those bills. Alright. Let's start jamming some Painter's Servant. This opener seems alright to me. We have artifacts that we can use our Welder with. We've got 2 different routes to Grindstone here. Or effectively, the Engineer can be a redundant copy of whatever we need it to be. So I like this one. We'll keep. I think we just start off on a basic mountain here. I don't want to expose ourselves to Wasteland, although the plan is next turn to have Painter's Servant with Red Blast backup if we can get that going. But we have to get the Painter down first. So I still think we're playing the mountain here. Because we can play the Great Furnace, the Mox Opal, play the Painter, and then it turns on the Mox Opal. Alright, we've got a Windswept Heath on the other side of the board. Could be looking at Green-White Depths, Maverick, that sort of ballpark. Getting a basic Forest. Could be looking at like some sort of Nardu deck. Someone like a Delighted Halfling would probably confirm that. A Noble Hierarch. I suspect our opponent is on Nardu now. So this Blue Blast might not be that helpful because they can use the Zenith to get it. But I'm not expecting our Painter's Servant to meet removal this turn cycle. So I think we just play out this Painter's Servant. I'm in blue. Now we play the Mox Opal. So now we have the ability to Red Blast away anything our opponent does. Next turn we can Goblin Engineer. I think this is a slightly slower way of doing it. We could have gone for the Engineer first, and maybe that speeds us up a turn. But I would rather have this Blue Blast ready to go in a format defined by strong blue cards and combo decks. Sylvan Safekeeper. Okay, that's not where we fight. We use our Red Blast on something like a Zenith or whatever. Keen-Eyed Curator. honestly, I think that's fine. It means that this engineer is not going to be the most useful thing you've ever seen. But we have the Urza Saga ticking up, and our opponent will not be removing our lands, given what the Nadu deck has access to. Right, we're going to engineer. So this is going to be some bait to see if we can distract our opponent's mana. Because our opponent's spending mana on the Keen-Eye Curator. That's probably alright. What is going to be the thing that's going to make them tap out? Probably something like the One Ring here. I don't think they care about Vexing Bauble. We're just throwing some bait out there. Alright, let's put the One Ring in there. That's good enough that our opponent's going to target it, but it's also not something we're necessarily in the market to draw right now. Like, it's fine, but we have the combo in short order. We just need to let our Urza Saga run its course and hope this Red Blast can do enough. Our opponent could be something like a Cradle Control deck. The Lair of the Hydra does suggest more Cradle Control than Nadu, but they could be like a bug build with Nadus in. We just don't know. Alright, so they're making their creatures larger via Exalted here. Yeah, okay, this definitely looks more like Cradle Control, so we need to hold this Red Blast for something like a removal spell of some description, or a... Yep, you can exile that. Or something along the lines of a Natural Order or Green Sun Zenith. Okay, so they're going to have some mana up. They're going to attack us with a 6/6. That's pretty large. But we will win this race in terms of our Grindstone doing enough. We can't kill their creatures because of Safekeeper. But again, that's fine. I will not tap this. I will not throw this Goblin Engineer under the bus just yet. We might do it next turn though. Saga ticks up. I don't believe our opponent's going to disrupt our Saga, but if they do, we probably want to get another one ticking. And we'll just sit back and let our Urza Saga take us to victory next turn. We just need to survive this turn cycle. We have a big Nope button in this red Elemental Blast that can hit anything right now. We just need to not get like double removal spelled. We have to counter a Natural Order because it would be lethal. If they have something like an Allosaurus Shepherd into Natural Order, then we're just cooked. I'm not even sure if they're running Allosaurus Shepherd in their deck. Once upon a time. Be my guest. Let me see what's coming. Spend your mana on that. That's all right by me. The fact they're tapping their Noble Hierarch suggests that they're not going to Natural Order because you want more creatures untapped, whereas you could have just used a Forest instead of one of your Noble Hierarchs here. I understand not wanting to tap the Bayou or the Lair of the Hydra because you have black mana, you have a creature, but tapping the Forest over a Noble Hierarch here would make more sense to me. So they don't have a Natural Order in hand, which means they probably can't fetch it with this either because that's not one of the card types you can get off the Once Upon a Time. So gleaning a little bit of extra information from the way our opponents tap in for their spells here. A White of the Reliquary. This will be too slow to matter, so that's good. Endurance is a card that our opponent can have that can buy them an extra turn. Alright, Goblin Engineer, please get under the bus. Don't see you doing a great deal of anything here. And we're not going to be able to chomp out this next turn because it might have Trample. Hopefully our opponent doesn't get a next turn apart from their draw step. There's the White of the Reliquary. It leaves our opponent with 2 cards in hand. Make a friend. We will not be making a friend this time around. Let's get our Grindstone. Let's mountain. Activate this Grindstone. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so we've milled them out. We're going to see an Endurance in their upkeep. I suspect that is the case here. They have shown us their whole deck. They are very much a relatively stock-looking one. The Bristly Bill is a relatively new piece of tech that some of these Cradle Control decks have adopted. Counter target blue spell, please. So this blast that we've been sandbagging this whole game, we found a target for it right at the end. Okay, so what looks good here? We want some creature removal. So Fury looks good. The more Furies look good. A Braid looks good. And a Fiery Confluence is pretty reasonable because they have lots of creatures we can sweep up with it. I like the things that shut down their activated abilities here. I don't think we want the Blood Moon effects. Even though they use a lot of land, they can just win the game without having their Trixie lands relatively well. I don't think this is where I want to be. I think these things are more important and will be better for us in the long run. Ghost Vacuum or Soulguide Lantern. Which of these? I think we need to keep one piece of Graveyard Hate. And I also think we're going to trim a couple of Red Blasts out of our list because they don't seem great into what our opponent's doing. I don't mind having access to some. I'm also tempted to trim some amount of our Welder package because our opponent's very good at manipulating our graveyard. So if we trim a couple of Welders here. The Vexing Bauble is also... The only thing Vexing Bauble stops is Force of Vigor. So I'm okay to keep one in. And then that leaves us, which piece of Graveyard Hate would we like to remove? The Ghost Vacuum is recursive. The Saga Lantern is like a one and done, but it does cantrip, and that can be useful in situations. So I think we're going to keep the Soulguide Lantern. and run something along these lines. So just a boatload more removal and some disruption for our opponent's things. We can play like a fairer game here. We're easing off of the graveyard a little bit with our welders. It does mean the Defiler looks a lot worse when we only have 2 welders. Are we supposed to split the welders and the engineers to make the Defiler better? Because the Defiler is very strong if we get that up and running. So let's try that. Obviously the engineer tutors, which is a big deal. Not a big fan of the Great Furnace here, but I do like having access to this Fury. I think we probably have to mulligan this one. If we're not deploying our lands, we will just lose the game in relatively short order. I think we probably have to send this one back. We can get a similar hand with like just 1 less engineer or 1 less pyroblast, or even, you know, a 5-card hand with 1 less pyroblast and 1 less engineer, and it's largely going to be a similar affair. Makes a Fury cost more of our hand, but I think that's fine. I just want to be able to play my spells. Alright, basic land. I don't really want this Vexing Bauble right now. I will keep this. Do we have enough do we have enough artifacts here? Do we need to keep... No, we don't need to keep the Vexing Bauble here. Although I really don't want to get blown out with a Force of Vigor when we're already down on cards. So are we getting rid of the Fable of the Mirror Breaker because it's cost 3 mana and we're only at 2 mana here? But Fable of the Mirror Breaker does so much work for us. This is a really tough choice of what to throw back here. I don't think we're throwing back our combo pieces. We're obviously keeping enough artifacts to turn on our Mox as well. So 1, 2, and then one of these 2 at the very least. Maybe we throw back the Soul Guide Lantern. Once Upon a Time. That is a free spell, but we're never going to hit that with a Vexing Bauble, because our opponent will always cast it first. And Endurance, good to know about. So having the Vexing Bauble, the Soul Guide Lantern is also good against the Endurance plan our opponent has, whereas something like a Ghost Vacuum doesn't work. Ignoble Hierarch, sure. So we need to play out our Mox Opal before we play out our Vexing Bauble. But this also shuts off Pitchcast Endurance, which is pretty relevant too. Play this out, play out our Mox, then we'll deploy the Vexing Bauble. So no Pitchcast Endurance, no Force of Vigor. So next turn we can play Grindstone and Painter and just say to our opponent, can you deal with that? And hopefully the answer is no, but they probably have some Fatal Pushes or Abrupt Decays, possibly Assassin's Trophies that they've boarded in. A Dryad Arbor. It's not going to give them additional mana this turn. So we're not looking at a 3-drop just yet. But we could see something like a White of the Reliquary, which is quite a powerful one. Things like Talon Gates of Madara phasing out our Painted Servant can be quite a big deal as well. Coming in for 1? They are coming in for 1. Alright. That's good news for us. It's better than them deploying something. On the mountain, I would rather have our permanents work here. Let's play out this Grindstone. Let's play out the Painter and say, can you beat this? If they can, then we can start again with a Fable of the Mirror Breaker and try and work our way that way. This means that if our opponent doesn't have an answer, they're going to be holding up an Endurance the whole time. And that's going to be a huge tax on their mana. And what we can do is we can just fire it off in their end step. They have to cast it, then we go to our turn and grind them again. So they need to have multiple Endurances. Or a removal spell, or any removal spell is fine here. But we've turned off Force of Vigor, unless they're hard casting it, which they can do this turn, provided they have a land. Cradle, that certainly gives them a little jump in mana. If we have any 1-drops, they're effectively free. 2 mana in the pool. We should be seeing something like a Natural Order. Try and get something a bit larger in play. Maybe dig their way towards what they need. Vexing Bauble does a lot of work here. Aha! This is going to be for a Collector Oof. We did board in a bunch of removal. Red Blasts are on as well for us. If we draw a Red Blast or a Fury, we can win because we can crack our Bauble. It does mean that they get access to Endurance though, and they can just cast Endurance in their upkeep. I guess we can't crack the Bauble to Pitchcast a Fury is the one downside we're in at the moment. But we only have like 2 Furies, but we got the, might be coming over 2 or 3. We've got the Braids, we've got the Red Blasts. I believe that they are going to be useful. Our opponent says they can't find the Collector Oof in their deck. Oh, I was curious to see how that would play out. Let's see if we draw anything useful. Yeah, Collector Oof would have been pretty darn good with this selection of stuff coming up. Alright, I'll take it, but I think we might have been going to a game 3 on that one. We get the Fable, so we loot through, but we got a lot of cards to get through before something big actually happens there. Alright, let's go to round 2. On the play, yeah, we've got some options here. There's an argument to keep up this Pyroblast rather than deploy the Grindstone. I think that makes sense. Keeps our opponent a little bit off balance, not knowing what we're doing, and it means that we can Pyroblast like an Echo of Eons if our opponent is a combo deck. And we're going to have to spend a little bit of time getting our other stuff to work anyway before this Grindstone is going to be a useful thing to have in play. So I think we're taking a slightly cautious approach, but it's reasonable given the situation. A Mox Diamond. All right, we're on something lands adjacent. It could just be full-on lands, or it could be green-white depths. A basic forest, an Elvish Reclaimer. Okay. Could be a tough one. So anything we get here with the Engineer, probably going bye-bye in the near future. So let's get the Dragon Engine. See if that's juicy enough for our opponent to spend their turn getting a Bajuka Bog. Because we don't really want to do that, but if we can take a turn away from our opponent and let us deploy stuff, we might be okay. I'm not sure how long we can expect this Urza Saga to stay in play against our opponent's deck. If they're getting a Bajuka Bog instead of a Wasteland. Alright, they've already got a Wasteland. Okay. So they're just going to hold up this Reclaimer and this Wasteland. And we're going to get one tick with our Urza Saga. Oh, actually, we're not going to get any ticks with our Urza Saga, because we're going to Wasteland it first. Yeah, that's pretty awkward, isn't it? If we have to hope they miss this. They can take us off of this ever-making mana, which I think is really strong to do. Yeah, our opponent agrees. We don't get to make mana off it, because it has to learn the ability to do that. We had to kind of play through that Wasteland at some point. So, what are we doing now? It's probably Vexing Bauble. Shuts off future Mox Diamonds, gives us an artifact to weld. Our opponent might get a Bajuka Bog. Right, let's just get this Grindstone. Presager is something they could have access to. They already have a 3/4 Reclaimer. So they can beat down, they can go and shoot her up something spooky here. I don't think our opponent's ever going to be shields down on that Wasteland they played, so I think we just had to play into it. I hope they missed it. If they didn't, at least we got through the Wasteland. Now, if they just have a loam, then things get a bit rough. This feels more like green-white depths. I have seen some lands builds with the Reclaimer, but it tends not to be with the Flagstones as well. Okay. What are we up to? We can crack this to draw a card. This is probably where we're at, I would say. If we find something like an Ancient Tomb, we can deploy the Fable. Or we could find another useless Vexing Bauble here. Not feeling amazing right now. There is definitely a cost for playing Pyroblast in your deck. If your opponent does not turn them on themselves, and you have to do it, then it becomes awkward. So they're going to lose their Flagstones and get 2 lands. So they're going to get probably a Savannah here. And then they're going to get whatever tech land they think is best. Could be the Bajuka Bog right now. Okay, they're going for a Thespian Stage, which means that Dark Depths is shortly to follow. There it is. They should do this now before we can play. Well, I guess they can do it in response to us casting a Painted Servant. Because if we Painted Servant, we might be able to Pyroblast the land in response. How do we go about winning this one? All the red blasts the eye can see. Okay, I think we are on getting back our Dragon Engine here. Doesn't feel good. The problem here is, if they go get a Bajuka Bog, they can still combo us off. This is the matchup where we require the Blood Moon effects. Alright, let's discard 5 cards and see if 3 cards are better. The answer is no. Okay, so what would I like to help out here? So, as we mentioned, the Maguses and the Blood Moons all look great here. The Disruptive Flute and Pith Needle also look great. The Abrade is an interesting one, because our opponent will have some artifacts, things like Urza Saga Construct and Mox Diamonds. But this doesn't always kill the Elvish Reclaimer. Our Graveyard hit is good. The Vexing Bauble is only really hitting our opponent's Force of Vigor, so I don't mind trimming 3 of those, having one of these that we can maybe fetch up at the right time. I'm a little bit skeptical about the One Ring. If our mana is going to be under duress, the One Ring could be a really difficult thing for us to actually leverage. Something to consider. If our graveyard is going to be under duress, we probably want to get rid of some of our graveyard-based things. I don't actually think Chaos Defiler is that good here. So we'll get rid of a couple of Welders. We'll get rid of a couple of Urza Sagas. And that gives us some removal spells we can bring in. So Fiery Confluence can always hit all of their Saga tokens. We can wipe out 3 Saga tokens, Moxes. So that's reasonable. We probably want to take out a couple of Blasts as well here. At least 2 of them. So that gives us 4 slots. So we get these 3 and probably 1 Fury, just so we can take out an early Elvish Reclaimer. There is an argument for having the Fang of the card, but we've got Graveyard Hate that we can reach for anyway. How do I feel about this switch up? I think it looks okay. Do I want more Furies is the question. Chaos Defiler can do a similar thing to Furies, but it requires us to jump through some hoops to get it to work. I'm going to take out... is it a Welder? Was it a Pyroblast? Take out Pyroblast actually and have another Fury. Let's try that. Turn 2 Megas of the Moon. Not a bad way to start the ball rolling. I think we probably begin with this Ghost Vacuum just so we can keep our opponent's graveyard under wraps. We'll eventually win with the Grindstone, I'm sure. We might just beat them down with Megas of the Moon. Just remember it's something that our opponent might have access to. If they have a Mox, then they will have some mana. But let's just get this Ghost Vacuum down first. And we can stop their creatures ever becoming large, which buys us a lot of time. So this is going to give them access to white mana to plow our Magus. Do I fancy getting this Engineer in instead? Kind of into that, to be honest. See if I can make them fetch something bad. Painter here. If they try and surgically extract it, we can always Ghost Vacuum it so their extraction doesn't go off and we still have access to what we require. Savannah. Still no spells from our opponent. This does feel like our opponent is trying to hold up either a Force of Vigor or some removal spells. I will deploy just a Grindstone here. So we can swap out the Vacuum for a Painter, untap and kill our opponent, which certainly makes things a touch awkward. And Yavimaya. So probably going to go get basic planes with this Windswept Teeth. So in the end step, I think we cycle this now. There's going to be a crop rotation for Paducah Bog. That could be annoying, but it's not going to be the end of the world here. It is the Paducah Bog. So they've burnt a crop rotation on that. Okay, I think we're going to go into the Megas of the Moon plan now. Because if we do it our opponent's end step, then something like a Force of Vigor won't work because we just wait till their turn to use it. And if they use it in our turn, we grind them in response. So they're going to get a basic plains here, and they're going to use that to source to Plowshares our Megas of the Moon. That is my... Oh no, they've gone for a forest there. So we can Grindstone ourselves if we get a bit more mana, and we use that Grindstone to find some delicious food for our Engineer. If we find a Soul Land, we can just... actually, no, we can't deploy it because of the Megas of the Moon. But if we find a bit more mana, we can get the... What is this? 6. This is a 2/4 creature. Okay, I would very much like to kill this creature if possible. Goodbye, 6. Attack for 3. Get another Grindstone in just so we have more fuel for our Engineer when the time is right. Hopefully we can find a land next turn and we can start Grindstoning ourselves. A Dryad Arbor. It's a 1/1. Engineer is pretty big here. I don't believe with what they have here they can kill our Megas of the Moon, so we're happy to get damages in. Let's get Engineer. I'm going to go for the Dragon Engine here and just refuel because we're really just looking for mana. Maybe we should have boarded out a copy of the One Ring because 4 mana is a lot when we're boarding out our Urza Sagas and our opponent is a Wasteland deck. So maybe we'll trim a couple of those. I don't think I trimmed them. Yes, we could trim that and get access to another Fury or maybe some more Welder action. Possibly even the Fairy Macabre. They have plateaus in their deck. So what are they playing red for? Is it just to pump their Prismatic Endings? Are they running Minsk and Boo? Eyes for Theolingus? Who knows? A red blast, you say? Let's get some cards first. An Endurance, you say? Okay. Pitching a Knight to the Reliquary. Because we want to make a land drop, we want to get those cards up front. Under the bus with the Dryad Arbor, is it? They could crop rotate this into something else. So they're going to crop rotate it quite likely. Oh wow, okay. They found a way. They're going to deal damage to our Magus here and unlock their entire hand. Oh, they've only got 2 cards left. Yeah, that's not great for us. I was not expecting to see Legolas's Quick Reflexes against the red deck there. It's worked out nicely for them, but we don't really have anything that... I guess they're really worried about, like, Furies and stuff. Knight of the Reliquary. Okay. I think our opponent's going to win this one. And the Dark Depths. A little bit yikes. They could have slow rolled that and made sure they got their Dark Depths actually doing even more work there. They could have just instantly made a 2020, but they can make a 2020 next turn anyway. Okay. I think we have been bested here. I was not expecting the Legolas's Quick Reflexes. We're supposed to Grindstone ourselves. This is all falling apart here. In my experience, I really like playing Turbo Depths into Painter. It's a very favourable matchup. It's about 70% playing Turbo Depths. And obviously this is a slightly different build, but I think it probably has similar win rates. Like, yes, we have like Blood Moons and stuff, but they have some reasonable answers. We're a little bit shy of where we need to be here. We can play this one out. Ronnie's going to make a Marit Lage here. And this One Ring is just sat in our hand doing nothing. Maybe they won't go for it. Maybe they'll play really defensively, despite us showing them that we're going to kill them next turn. This is the veteran stage and we lose the game. Yeah? Okay. If we don't attack with our Magus, we give our opponent more time to find something that might be able to answer it, like a Dismember or whatever. But we did allow ourselves to die. I just was not expecting a Legless with quick reflexes at all. So something to think upon if you find yourselves in a similar situation. Let's go to round 3. Only 1 mana, 2 4-drops. Obviously we do have a Spirit Guide, but I don't think we can keep this. I think I need to have a little bit more mana underneath me. This doesn't feel very good either, does it? We'll keep this and we'll bin off the Defiler. We have some stuff that can maybe shut down various things our opponent might want to do. Are we into another Green-White Depths matchup? No, okay. They're a Yorion deck, sure. So they're probably the Black-White Taxes deck that I've played against a little bit lately with the Overlord of the Balemerc. That deck actually looks pretty good. Like, it is quite fair for the most part. Alright, I took the 1 ring, so we don't have any gas. Understood. But we now have a Goblin Welder. So sign me up for that one. I will play out this Mox Opal now. I'm uncertain if our opponent is going to Thoughtseize out of our hand, or if they're going to play their own Vexing Baubles. It's just safe to get it down there. Orcish Bowmasters. Goodbye, Goblin Welder. You were rubbish. Which is kind of how I feel about Goblin Welder in general at the moment. Okay. That's not rubbish, is it? Let's play this one out. Let's exert this. I'll play out this Vexing Bauble first. This way our opponent cannot interact with our Welder here. Is it the Mox Opal or the Vexing Bauble that we sack? Probably the Bauble, and we just need to have mana to deploy the cards we get out of the 1 ring. Right, so they're going to ping our guy down, that's fine. He's done his job. Oh, we didn't get the protection from the 1 ring. We should have waited on that draw. Stoneforge Mystic. Okay. Yeah, we're going to take 1 extra damage from tapping the 1 ring early. I need to file from our opponent. A little attack. They got Cauldron in their hand, so I'd very much like to kill this Stoneforge Mystic. But our Arena of Glory being tapped is not the most useful. Okay. That's not gone great for us. Play this out. I don't think we can win here. I think Painter's, like, I think all these Pyroblast and stuff, they're just such dead cards a lot of the time. Like, they're very, very powerful. But at the same point, they come at a significant cost. Because you end up in a matchup like this where you need interaction and you just don't have it. And now we're just going to get wiped. A Solitude, pitching failure. Sure, so we're going to lose our Welder. Honestly, fine. It does mean the 1 ring is going to continue to burn us down. Right, no Arena of Glory. We do have an Ancient Tomb, but that is not the free amount of mana for sure. How much are we taking here? 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we should be okay to tap our Ancient Tomb. We need to find enough stuff to kill our opponent this turn. Okay. I feel we're getting slapped around here. That's not going to do anything, is it? Alright, we got annihilated there. But we have some pretty good tools here. I like the Furies. I like the Fiery Confluence. These all feel pretty good. If our opponent's playing the Overlord of Balemerc, we're going to want to keep our Graveyard Hate in. I quite like these Pit and Needle type stuff. I think we're going to be cutting some amount of these blasts. Like, they're okay as a thing that we can sometimes draw and have a Vindicate. I'm not a big fan of this 1 ring. And I don't really like the Vexing Baubles very much either. I think the 1 ring is quite expensive against a deck that's going to be pressuring our mana so much. So maybe we'll trim a couple of those. How do I feel about that? That looks okay. I'm going to be trying to play a reasonable, fair game here. We have ways of blowing up our own 1 ring. We got a lot of Welders. Having this 1/1 Welder with this Bowmaster running around doesn't feel great either. My personal view is that the best build of this deck is one that doesn't have Goblin Welder in at the moment, which is sacrilege to a lot of people, but it's how I feel. Don't you worry though, I'm going to go over what that deck looks like at the end of the video. Oh, why is the mana in our deck so troublesome? Now we can play out a Welder, but that might not do anything. If we don't draw a land or a 1-drop artifact on 2, we're not really getting anywhere here. Am I supposed to keep this because the upside is so high? I think I am. I think I'm supposed to mulligan to something with some stable mana in. Okay, that's stable. What are we getting rid of? Probably the Dragon Engine here. We don't really want this in our hand because it will get ploughed into the graveyard rather than how we actually want it to enter the graveyard, which is us putting it there via an engineer. We just got lots of mana, so it's going to be hard for our opponent to oppress our mana production. A Caracas, okay. We don't have any legendary creatures. They've got an Ether Vial, so they're going to be advancing on mana. Okay, sign me up for a Fable over this as a Saga for sure. Let's get some selection. Let's get some extra mana. This will help us keep up with our opponent's Ether Vial a little bit, because they're getting effectively 1 extra mana every turn, and so are we from the treasure. Except we have lots of things we can do with the treasure. We can also bank that mana for a turn. We get rid of Anna as a Saga. Maybe a mountain here as well. I like the Pith Needle to stop wastelands, but okay. I'm down to clown with this. Orcish Bowmasters can kill our Goblin Shaman. Let's place Pith Needle and put it on Ether Vial. Just shut down that mana production right away. Let's get this Painter in so that our Pyroblast is online. Now we can attack. If they had a Bowmasters, they'd probably fire it off on the Fable, in response to the Fable trigger. But we can counterspell Ophelia. Stoneforge Mystic Pitching Solitude. If they target our Painter's Servant, that switches off this Pyroblast anyway. I think I'm just gonna... Oh, is that true? If we let them kill our Painter, we don't have access to Pyroblast this turn cycle. But it means we have the Painter for the next turn anyway, and we can just protect our Painter. If they have anything scary that they play to the board, we can just let that enter the board and then we can kill it. What are you going for here? They are going for the Painter. If they jam Ophelia at us, that could be pretty annoying. If they go Ophelia into Overlord of the Baelmerk, that's pretty scary. But we can't defend against that if we're defending off of the Painter's Servant and using the Pyroblast on the Solitude anyway. So it kind of comes out in the wash either way. I'd rather have the Pyroblast to defend our one that's actually going to be combo winning and winning the game for us. There is the Overlord of the Baelmerk, so this is going to flicker. It's also going to get back that Solitude. I think if you're playing Death and Taxes, this black-white build is the only viable build that you really want to be playing right now. Because this little combo here is really good. I still don't really particularly like Death and Taxes very much, but I think this build actually looks pretty hot. So they're going to get back their Overlord of the Baelmerk. This time it's going to be a big fat creature. They found a Flickerwisp and another Ophelia and a Bowmasters. I don't think any of those... Oh, they went for the Bowmasters. Let's get Painter's Servant in. And blue. So we know they have a Solitude. If we deploy this other Painter's Servant, is that better? We know they have a Solitude right now. Let's get this other Painter's Servant in. Now we don't care if they Solitude. Let's get rid of this Overlord, I think. I'll get my treasure token here. Which gives us more mana to work with next turn, which is very much our go turn. We also get to copy our Painters, so it's going to be very hard for our opponent to destroy all of our Painters. They would have to destroy them both now in their turn. Certainly possible. A Solitude and a Skyclave, or a Plough and a Solitude. We already know they've got one of them covered. But we couldn't let them have the Baelmerk because they just keep repeatedly Solituding us every turn and put us in the lock. Which is a little bit scary. Solitude pitching Pre-War Formal Wear. So they're going to get rid of one of our Painters. We're going to see the other removal spell now. There it is. Sure. That was always a possibility. But this means we're probably just making an Urza Saga construct. And we can start making them bigger and bigger. Alright, they're blinking out our Pitting Needle. Well, that's terrifying. Well, they got Flickerwisp or Skyclave. Recruiter of the Guard. Are they going to find another Solitude? A Witch Enchanter. Okay, they just wanted the land. Holding up the mana for Orcish Bowmasters. I guess we still name Ether Vial. The One Ring. Is that better? We know they've got the Bowmasters though. I think we just need to make a construct here. What are we going to fetch with our Saga? I don't mind the Ghost Vacuum. Just to stop them having anything off of the Overlord. But they don't target. They just mill and then get something. So that doesn't actually help us that much. Maybe we need to get the Mox Opal so we have enough mana to play this One Ring next turn. Interesting choices available. We could get the Vexing Bauble so they can't Solitude us without having to pay full mana for it. There's nothing we can really do to stop this Ophelia. And the Ophelia is just going to keep blinking out our constructs, which is a real pain. Oh, there's no good options here. I guess we take the Grindstone and maybe luck sack our way into a win. Try and get some damages on the go straight up. If you got another removal spell, fair enough, I guess. So they can clean out our Shaman token here. But it's going to be a 6/6 once we get our treasure. It's that Bowmasters we knew about. So they're going to ping our Shaman and then they're going to block it. That's fine. The Ophelia can just blink the Recruiter every turn. Our opponent's fair game is way better than ours. That's kind of what Death and Taxes does. It just sort of grinds people out fairly. And the Overlord feels like a very, very strong engine. So that kind of gives them that extra juice. Oh, get rid of that Bowmaster so we can play the One Ring. Do it. Coward. Okay, so we at least clock our opponent for 6. but their Recruiter of the Guard can be blinked, or they can blink out one of our tokens, or they can blink out our Pith Needle to get access to the Ether Vial activations. There's a whole bunch of things our opponent can do with his failure. The one upside for us is they can only do one of those things. They only have to choose the best option out of like 3 really good options. Like, oh, come on. That is unfortunate for us right there. They're probably getting a Surveil land here. Actually, no, they're going to put the Orion into hand, aren't they? Alright, failure. I think they're just going to blink out our construct. I think that's the safest thing they can do. Next turn, they can blink out our Pith Needle if they want to. Yeah, so they're going to blink out our tokens. So they can get that 1 damage in. Okay. This means if we draw Painted Servant, we can win the game this turn. We have an out. Because we have enough mana to fire off the Painter. And we know our opponent just has a Urion in hand. That was not the one. They can... Yeah, we're not winning that, are we? That felt absolutely miserable. Yeah. We have too many cards that require bits and pieces to work, like our Welders and stuff like that, and our Pyroblast, and our opponent just has too many ways of collapsing one half of that. Alright, let's go to round 4. Okay, we have turn 1 Graveyard Hate, good against the Graveyard decks. We have Fable of the Mirror Breaker that we can play on 2, so let's keep this one. Polluted Delta, this looks like I want to get this Ghost Vacuum in. We had an option there of playing an Ancient Tomb to play it out. The problem with that is that plays into a Wasteland and puts this Fable of the Mirror Breaker very far away. And we don't know how important this Ghost Vacuum is going to be anyway. There might just be a tempo deck. The tempo deck is now more popular among like the winners meta than the blue-black Reanimator deck. It's overtaken it. Which is a Goblin Engineer. Curious. We could just hold up some blasts and just play this one a lot slower. Yeah, I think we're going to go for doing this one a bit slower. A Badlands. We're looking at Grixis Control here. And Orcish Bowmasters. Not great against what we're doing right now. Can certainly mess with our Fable loots, but that's not the end of the world. Sure, I'll take 2 damage. Okay, let's play this Ancient Tomb. Play this Fable holding up our Red Blast. We should have taken out one of these lands with our Ghost Vacuum. Right, we're in. Let's just hold up our Pyroblast. So the problem with the Grixis Control deck from our point of view is they're not actually that heavy on the blue spells, especially post-board. Post-board, they're going to be mostly a black-red deck that's going to be messing us up. Right, I guess we lose our token. Volcanic Island. It does look like a Grixis Control list. Let's go with this Shoulder's Edict. What am I going to get rid of here? Am I going to get rid of anything? I quite like our hand, to be honest. Okay, so I'd like to deploy this Saga. I'd also like to deploy this Engineer. Our opponent runs Colligan's Command, so I don't want to hang out this Grindstone unless I have to. Quite like the Painted Servant here. It's definitely an argument for getting the Dragon Engine. Just try and grind through what our opponent's working with over there. But having all these blasts makes me feel quite secure with a Painter. Okay, black and a red. This could just be another Shoulder's Edict. A Molten Collapse. On the plus side, it was not blowing up our 1-drop as well. Our life total is not having the best time right now. Let's go with this Molten Collapse. So flip our Fable. And our Urza Saga is able to make friends now. I'll play out 1 times Grindstone to make our creatures bigger. Force of Will. We already have another Grindstone, so I honestly don't care. I was still making a 2/2 Saga. That is enough to trade with to beat this Bowmasters in combat. A Ponder. I want to Red Blast this. Just stop our opponent digging into stuff, because the things they're digging to, we won't be able to Red Blast for the most part. That feels good. Ah, how do you like them apples, opponent? Alright, let's make a friend. Let's make another friend. What do I want here? Lantern. Vexing Bauble is pretty handy on this board. Stops things like the Force of Wills from our opponents. And we can always cycle it if we really want to. I'll play out another Grindstone here. Am I activating this construct? I don't think so. We can do that in our opponent's end step. Have more for next turn. Just hold up this Red Blast. We'll blast any blue spell our opponent plays. Like if they got cantrips, try and get something going. We just snap that off. Alright, 1 card in hand. Oh, is it a blue spell? There's 2 blue pips. Is this a Lorien Revealed? Oh, look at this. This is a thing of beauty. Boom. Absolutely love to see it. Alright, that's enough for our opponent. Love it. Okay, so what are we doing here? Now, like I said, our opponent is probably going to be boarding into mostly like red and black spells, like loads of removal. Now, our blast will still hit their counter spells if they have any. It'll still hit their psychic frogs. So they're not without merit. They do have some graveyard shenanigans, but maybe the vacuum is better on this front. Which of these actually look good to us? We could have another red blast that can take out the Baleful Strix. We could play some Blood Moon effects. The problem is, our Urza Sagas are really good against our control opponent. They don't have Wastelands in their deck. So I don't think I'm in the mood for that. So we could just take out this Solar Lantern and bring in something like a Fiery Confluence that can sweep out a bunch of stuff or dome them for 6. Or we could have a Fury, which can do similar stuff, but also just be another threat if the game goes long. I think we're relatively well kitted out in this matchup. I'm not going to board in the other Red Blast, because I think the things that we care about most from our opponent are actually going to be black and red spells. I don't just want to get caught short, and 6 is plenty of Red Blasts here. Because they're going to board down on Force of Wills because we have all the Red Blasts. Okay, I feel like alright with this. Should I work out if I want to bring in the Magus and the Blood Moons? Our opponent is a 3-colour deck, but they will have red removal. They have basic swamps. I think we're just going to fight on this front here. Oh, mana. Why you betray me like this? Okay, Urza Saga is a hot one for sure. We keep this. What am I most worried about? I think we have to get rid of the engine here, because the Pyroblast stops something like a Psychic Frog just spiraling out of control. And our plan is to just ride this Urza Saga to victory. Thoughtseize? Alright, opponent, what would you like to take? And as you can see, they fetched a basic straight away. They don't want to mess around with Blood Moon nonsense. They took the One Ring. Okay. Let's play this one out. Probably this Vexing Bauble. So that's no counter spells for our opponent. But they might not be running any post-board anyway. I think in my opponent's position, I would be boarding out most of my forces. Alright, they didn't play a Psychic Frog. That's good news for us. Let's just do some fair Urza Saga gaming, and then try and bap them with a Painter's Servant holding up Pyroblast. If our opponent taps low enough, we can just get them. At some point, our opponent is going to have to tap mana to interact with our Urza Saga. Or our Urza Saga tokens, rather. Now, they might have something like a Meltdown. They could have a Dress Down here. I will get Pema Mountain. So they're just fetching around a Pith and Needle is what they were doing there. We're just going to hold open our Red Blast with the intention of deploying a Painted Servant with Red Blasts next turn. We'd love to find a red source, but we have enough to just combo if our opponent taps out. This Colligan's Command feels like a Colligan's Command. Could be Prismari Command. You sometimes see that in these Grixis decks. Not very often, especially in the current meta, but I have seen them before. So you're going to destroy an artifact and make us discard a card? I think I'll probably get rid of one of our Red Blasts in that case. We're unlikely to be able to leverage both Red Blasts in the same turn right now. And having the Ancient Tomb means we have enough mana to just deploy Painter and crack the Grindstone. If that becomes a thing that we need to do if our opponent like taps out for something. You can take the 4. I decided against what they were doing. 4 of my finest damages to you. Okay, so we have our opponent on a 2-turn clock now. I suspect they will have answers for what we're doing. If they have a Dress Down, we want to attack first here. Because if they play a Dress Down, then our Painted Servant won't come in with the useful ability. I guess we can just Red Blast that though. Let's play this Ancient Tomb. Let's get more damage through. Let's try this Painted Servant. This, no, it can't be a Forced Negation. That's paying some costs over there. Okay, Colligan's Command. Destroying our Grindstone. And what's the other option? We discard a card. I'll discard this Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Thank you. One next opponent. So we just have the beatdown plan with a Red Blast to counter something like a Meltdown or whatever. Tap for 4, so either of these constructs is lethal. Obviously, if they kill one of them, then it only becomes a 3-power guy, but then we still have the Painter to deal that 4th point of damage. You need to have a good turn here, opponent, and I hope you don't, because it feels like we need to put some W's on the board today. A Ponder. No. Because we have the Painter out, we just want to hit the payoff spell. Especially since they can't counter back with a Force ring. So I need a Dress Down or a Meltdown. They did not shuffle here. Right, you tap low. Or is this going to be a Molten Collapse? Oh, it is the Meltdown. Counter target blue spell. Is this the game? We can play around Spell Pierce. Oh, they have a blue blast of their own, do they? Sacrifice this Bauble. See if it draws us into... Okay. If it draws us into Simian Spirit Guy, we can just Pyroblast this again. Okay. 2 cards left in our opponent's hand. We get to play the One Ring here, though. Now, our life total is not a finite resource. Sorry, it's not an infinite resource. It is a finite resource. An Orcish Bowmasters. Say no to this one. If they've got a way of dealing with this Painted Servant now, then we're absolutely cooked. Uh-oh. A Lightning Bolt. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Well, this is real bad. This is turned on a dime for us. Yikes. They can't target... Oh, they target themselves. They're at 2 life. Did we board in anything that can deal direct damage? I don't think we did. Oh, no, we did. We had... Oh, do we bring in Fiery Confluence? We did not bring in the Fiery Confluence. Okay. So if we play this Goblin Engineer, we can bring back the Phyrexian Dragon Engine. We kind of need to hope our opponent doesn't remember that we have the Dragon Engine. I think the play here is get this Engineer going. You've got another Hydroblast over there, opponent. What do I even want here? I guess it's the Painted Servant. No, we already have a Painted Servant and a Grindstone. Yeah, so we don't need that. Is it... If we put the Chaos Defiler in the graveyard, we have the shot of the drawing the Arena of Glory and a Welder and putting them both in. Could just get the Vexing Bauble for a redraw, though. But we already have a Vexing Bauble in there, so we don't need that. Okay. Okay, I think it's the Defiler. So our plan is, our opponent forgets we have this Phyrexian Dragon Engine that we discarded 1,000,000 years ago. And then they attack. And we just kill them with Double Strike. I would like to untap with this, well, this Engineer. No damage being forced through here. Oh no. Oh, okay, they're going for it here. You got another removal spell. Lightning Bolt our creature out of the way. No cards in hand. Oh my god, have they forgotten about the engine? They have. We need to draw a land that allows us to cast it without dying to our own Ancient Tomb. But it's a line. Oh, there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's got haste. Here we go. We will not discard cards because we don't want our opponent to just kill us with a Bowmaster. Just get in a nice fair bit of damage. Alright, we managed to get there. Whew. If we tap the One Ring to draw the cards, the Bowmaster kills us. So we had to draw one of our lands that was an Ancient Tomb. But we did manage to get there. Alright, that's a W on the board. That's 4 rounds in the books. We are 2-2. We're very much 0-2s and 2-0s. Let's see how the final round goes and if we can put the positive on the board. Don't like the mana in this hand. We're going to mulligan. Okay, this one seems alright to me. I think we're going to get rid of one of our red blasts. We don't have anything to make them guaranteed good. And we want these like other payoffs and stuff. I ponder. So they might just be good anyway. But our opponent could have been like a green-white depths deck and it's just a blank card. I mean, it's too much of a risk to have 2 of them in our hand. I think we will deploy the Grindstone this turn. If our opponent wants to daze, it stops them being able to do the whole Entomb Reanimate if that's in their deck. Another ponder. So our opponent could be a Doomsday deck, they could be Tempo, they could be Reanimator, they could be Ad Nauseam Tendrils. Okay, so they're probably the fair Tempo deck with the Gnarl Spellbomb in the main. Because Doomsday doesn't have room for that. And the blue-black Reanimator doesn't have room for that either. They could be some sort of Grixis deck or even a blue-black sort of control deck. I know there's a new blue-black Delver deck that's actually making a little bit of a splash. I will stop my opponent from drawing a card here and getting a body on board. A Wasteland. We're not going to allow our opponent to leverage that one. Let's get this Engineer on the go. How do you feel about this one? A Force of Will. Almost feels like bait. Because if we counterspell this, we get an Engineer, but they've already got it locked down with the Spellbomb, so it just doesn't do anything. Whereas if they play a Psychic Frog, we just die to it. So I think we have to let this go. As horrible as that is. We may have telegraphed the fact we have a Pyroblast now. A Ponder. Again, I think in a world where Psychic Frog and Murktide are the 2 scariest things our opponent can do here, I would very much like to have access to this Pyroblast. Oh, a Netherglyph. 2 cards in our opponent's hand. Another Goblin Engineer. What are we going to try and force out? It's probably going whatever we get. Kind of tempted to get this Soulguide Lantern. I'm expecting our opponent to Gnarl Spellbomb anyway. I don't want to put anything too precious in there, but something that's enough that we can shut down our opponent's aggro and have a bit of joy that way if we need to. Cameo. 2 cards in our opponent's hand. I think we're supposed to hit this one. This does play into a daze, but once this is in play, if they have a Brainstorm and they haven't cast any Brainstorms yet, then they can just flip it. Right, they did have a daze. do they have a Brainstorm as well? Because that would be especially bad. Because if we just let this sit and play, then we don't necessarily get to Pyroblast. We could just let them accrue some advantage. Oh, yeah, they had the Brainstorm and the Daze. So we played around one thing. They had both. It's a good time to be a blue-black player in the old Legacy format, that's for sure. I don't think blue-black has ever been as strong as it is now. And, well, I guess that's not strictly speaking true, because back in the day, a long, long time ago, blue-black was basically everything. Alright, so the Tamiyo is ticking up. Our chances of winning this game are ticking down. But the One Ring is a very powerful Magic the Gathering card. Do I believe in the power of the One Ring? If they got another Daze here, then... So they're firing off the Spell Bomb in the hopes of drawing either a Force of Will or a blue card to go with the Force of Will that's in their hand. Or a Daze. Oof. Oh, that stings. That stings a lot. There's no point attacking because it gets -1 anyway, so we don't get to put any damage on the Tamiyo. Wowzers, trousers. We're getting Baleful Strix, yep. It is tough. Right, they're putting back the Force of Will in their hand, so we're probably not going to be able to resolve anything. But if this goes into the graveyard, next turn we can then pick it up with the Engineer. We just have to work through it. Oh, Kaito, that's interesting. We didn't see that in a lot of these blue-black builds. I like the Kaito a lot. It's impressed me whenever I've played it. But you need to have stuff that's worthwhile to bounce back. Obviously, the Baleful Strix is the perfect example of that. I will take 5. And a Psychic Frog. Oh, you spoil us. Okay, let's get this Ghosty McVacuum in. So we're probably going to be blocking and then vacuuming and then turning our vacuum into a copy of the One Ring. That is my plan for this turn. Are you going to jump the frog? So we can stop them drawing a card here, but we take more damage. What a horrible situation to be in. So we'll take out the artifact because that's a unique type that we can... Oh no, they have an artifact creature here. Creature, that's the only creature. Take out the Strix here. Oh no, we can't return the One Ring, can we? Because it's only CMC 4, isn't it? Yeah, so we can only do up to CMC 3 with the... Oh, sorry, mana value 3 with the Engineer, so we don't get to put back the ring, do we? I don't think that necessarily changes what we're doing that turn. Ancient Tomb. Sure, Ghost Vacuum. Let's get a Baleful Strix that cantrips. Now, it doesn't look like it's going to be good enough. We can block here, our opponent can throw a card into the frog and we die. Alright, that felt bad. But I think this is a matchup where we actually do want the additional Red Blast, so let's have that. I like our Graveyard Hate here. I like our Vexing Baubles. So Fury can hit Planeswalkers, so that's something. Our opponent's deck should be pretty good at playing on basics, but we might be able to cheese him with a Blood Moon. But it comes at the cost of losing our Urza Sagas. I'm not sure if I want that. The Pith Needle and Disruptor Flute to stop Planeswalkers or Wastelands also feel pretty relevant here. I think they're going to have Orcish Bowmaster and stuff, so we probably want to cool it a little bit on these Welders. And if we're getting rid of Welders, maybe get rid of the Defiler. The Defiler does answer their scary permanents, so maybe we do want to keep the Defiler in. We could trim down on our combo slightly. So we could trim like one Servant. I think actually we need to trim some One Rings here. These feel bad and expensive. Actually, let's just get rid of them all together. Trying to resolve a 4-drop against the Wasteland deck with a bunch of counter magic. Is that really where I want to be in my life? Don't want these Braids. They don't kill as many things as the Fury does. Can kill a Tamiyo, but if they flip it, then we can't kill it, whereas the Fury can. We also have the Red Blast for it. Do I want another Welder? Maybe I do want to do a 3-3 split just so we have a chance of getting this Defiler in. Like, the One Ring can definitely grind out what our opponent's doing, but trying to resolve a 4-drop against their deck just feels like a recipe for disaster. We haven't had like the greatest mana either this league. What are we doing with this? We can use a Fable to fix our hand with a Defiler. The Bauble means that we're probably going to be resolving our spells. We haven't answered their first scary thing. This all seems above board so far. So the ideal when you cast the Vexing Bauble is for them to have a counter spell in hand. And it's like, well, am I going to pitch this to this Bauble or not? Because if they pitch it and they don't draw any more counter magic, they've just wasted an extra card. If they don't, they're down one card. So it's a horrible situation for our opponent. A Nile Spellbomb. Okay. It changes things a touch. I think we go for Ghost Vacuum and then hold up Pyroblast. So we know the Ghost Vacuum is going to resolve. We can Pyroblast a scary thing knowing that they can't Daze back because of our Vexing Bauble. And they do nothing. I'd love to draw a land. Did not draw a land, but we can deploy this Welder. I am finding we don't have enough mana quite often with this deck. We're going to see Bowmasters. Yep, that's horrible news for us. I'm inclined to take the Welder with our Vacuum, but we'll see. Do I want our opponent to have this Brainstorm? What are we doing? Like, they're probably trying to get rid of some horrible cards. No, I think we have to let this Brainstorm go because we kind of want to do Painter's Servant, Pyroblast away the Bowmasters so we can get the looting off of our Fable. There's a Wasteland. Okay. Thoughtseize. Ugh, that's so bad for us. So very bad. Right, I took our Fable, which was the best thing that we had going on. Let's get rid of a sorcery. It's hard of them to put sorceries in because more of their cards are instants. That engine is so bad. Right, we have to work out what we're supposed to take here. Something that's good enough for our opponent to worry about. Right, let's put the Dragon Engine in. I'm not sure our Engineer is going to make it around the table. Ponder, our Red Blast is down. Got Bloodstained Mire. Fatal Push on our early creature. They can't play a Murktide in their second main due to the mana they have, so we don't need to exile something now. Let's get rid of the sorcery again. We have a mountain now. Let's play the Painter. Okay, so this should be enough to stop them attacking with 1/1s. And we can counterspell the next thing they do. It's of note. They're getting a Surveil land here, or do they have some more action? It's a Surveil land, okay. I rolled up a Wasteland. Makes sense. Oh, Baleful Strix. I hate this. I don't think we can fight it, though. I guess we're not really attacking right now. A Nethergoyf. Okay, that's fine. Another Wasteland, you say. It's not attacking here. Exile the Brainstorm. Another Red Blast. That's an interesting proposition, isn't it? That gives us 2 Vindicates instant speed if we need them. We should be able to curtail this Nethergoyf to some extent here. So we might just be getting pecked for 1. So let's Fatal Push. I'm happy to take 2 here. I don't want to go under the Nethergoyf in case there's some way that they can kill our Painter. A Brainstorm. Oh, are we supposed to just say no to this? I think so. I hate it though. The fact that our Red Blast can hit anything means that we can just stop the removal spells or, you know, the big scary thing they're doing. Maybe we're cracking this. Alright, another Red Blast. Okay. Like, eventually we might be able to win this one. Nile Spellbomb being cracked now. So this enables future graveyard shenanigans for us. We could have Ghost Vacuum to put one of our creatures underneath it. I think we're better off protecting our Life Turtle by going after their some pieces. A Ponder. Okay, we will Red Blast this one. Counter target blue spell. Because we got 2 more where that came from. Let's go with a Spell Bomb. I'm taking 3 here. And I'm a little bit fearful of this Nethergoyf just clocking us. 3 cards in our opponent's hand though. No, I think we take it this time. Psychic Frog. Alright. Counter target spell if it's blue. No to you. Don't think we're cracking the bauble. Fable. I would love to be able to tap out and do that, but I don't think we can. Feels so bad. Oh dear. We probably have to blast the Nethergoyf here. Snuff out. Do I protect my creature here? Or are we about a different life here? If we destroy target opponent if it's blue, hit this while this is on the stack. While it's still on the stack, we can exile the Nethergoyf so they can't ever get it back. I do not feel great about where we're at right now, but maybe the Fable of the Mirror Breaker is enough to sit there and dissuade more attacks, and then we just get pecked for 1 a few turns. A Fury, you say? Now, the cost of playing this Fury is quite real, but it does clear out all of their things. I think I'm going to play this Fable first. Because if we draw a land next turn, we maybe just hardcast this Fury. And that is a lot better, or we can hardcast a Defiler. We can do a lot of stuff with 1 more mana. Another Baleful Strix. Well, our Fury is going to have a relatively clean sweep, it seems. I think we're just going to get pecked for 1 here. I could be wrong. Just the 1. Sure. A Nethergoyf. Let's get rid of this Psychic Frog then. Can we draw a land here? We did draw a land, so we're not going to cycle anything here. We're going to play this mountain. We're going to attack with our Goblin Shaman here. So we can make this a 2/3, but it'll still die. The question is, which one of these do we play? We only get this opportunity to play the Defiler, so I think it's the Defiler. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no way we can beat that. Oh, that felt horrible. I don't think that matchup's supposed to be bad, but it didn't feel very good. Oh dear. Yeah. Not a very good league, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But I did say at the top that I don't think this is the best build of Welder, the best build of Painter. I think this is the most common build, but I think it has some problems that we definitely displayed today. So some of those problems involve trying to cast 4-drops with 22 lands, 4 of them being disappearing lands, is not necessarily great. Fable the Mirror Breaker, we don't really have the opportunity to cast this until turn 2. We're not casting it turn 1 unless we have the Simian Spirit Guide, so that's not very likely. So that doesn't feel as strong as some of the previous builds of of Painter, where you would have turn 1 Fable and then just snowball the game out immediately. It feels like we're playing a fairer game than some of the other Painter decks that are around. But the problem is we've got lots of cards that are bad on their own. So this whole selection of cards here, let's have a look. I would say, you know, this whole selection, even the Defiler, I guess, as well, possibly, like, these are one-offs, so, you know, we'll give them a pass. But this selection of 20 cards, a third of our deck, require other things to be good. So Pyroblasts, sometimes they will be good. There are a lot of good blue decks in the meta. But several times today we ran into decks that weren't blue. And we're talking about playing Eternal Weekend, where you're going to play against a really wide field. Because people will play the deck that they have, the deck that they like, as well as people playing the top decks. You don't see quite as much in the way of people pivoting to what the best deck is in a big tournament like that. And you know, you've got to play a lot of rounds against a lot of people with differing abilities and different budgets and access to cards. So you are going to run into people where your Pyroblasts do nothing. And that is awkward. Like, it's going to be okay when you're against the blue decks, sure. But we obviously had some draws where the Pyroblasts weren't good. We also had draws where the Pyroblasts would have been good. We mulligan, so we choose what to throw away. If we have 2 Pyroblasts, we're always going to be getting a Pyroblast if we don't know our opponent's deck, or at least most of the time, because we can't leverage them against, you know, half of the field or whatever. So that becomes kind of awkward. Goblin Welder. This requires you to have stuff in your graveyard. It doesn't put stuff in the graveyard on its own, so it requires you to be doing other stuff to make this work. The only way we really have of putting stuff in the graveyard is Fable the Mirror Breaker and Goblin Engineer, or if something dies or whatever. So I guess we can grindstone ourselves, but Welder requires more pieces to work. It's not like the old days where you had things like Lion's Eye Diamond to chuck a load of stuff in your graveyard and just go wild. We don't have that anymore. So this card also being a thing that dies to Orcish Bowmasters, which is cropping up a little bit more in the meta now that the blue-black tempo deck has overtaken the blue-black reanimator deck in terms of like the winners meta. So that is an important thing to note. So these also need artifacts, and we can sometimes be a bit shy of artifacts. You know, we do have a decent amount here. This is certainly better than some of the builds I've played relatively recently where we had less artifacts. So that's something to consider. The Engineer, I think, is the least egregious of these things, because at least the Engineer can go and find something, right? It's not like the Welder. It does require you to have an artifact, but at least it goes and finds you something, and that can just be a Dragon Engine, which is value later on down the line, so that's fine. So I think the Engineer is probably the least egregious of these. So I think we can even take it out of this pile of stuff that is kind of do nothing on its own and put it over here. This is still 16 cards. So Painter's Servant obviously turns on our Pyroblast and our Grindstone. It's the core of the deck in terms of how we win most of the time. But on its own, it is fundamentally not a powerful card, unless you're playing against Eldrazi, where naming a colour, so all of the things that tap for mana for colourless creatures, doesn't work. So you do get some nice work off of the Eldrazi, but Eldrazi has slipped down in the meta, I think. Now, it's not quite as popular as it was because the tempo deck has increased. The tempo deck is very good against the Eldrazi deck, so it's kind of changed things up a little bit. And obviously Grindstone does nothing on its own, but it is an artifact to facilitate these things, so there is some synergy with other stuff we're doing here, and you can use this to mill yourself and maybe make the Welder better. But this is a lot of stuff that on its own doesn't do a lot. And this one ring was so expensive that it often just sat there rotting in our hands. So we can be looking at over a third of our deck and like over half of our spells not really doing anything in games. And with the power and speed of Legacy at the moment, that is a terrifying position to be in my opinion. Let's have a little look at the Eternal Weekend Asia meta and how this deck fared at that tournament. So if we go down to Painted Grindstone, overall 50-50. Okay, reasonable. The Reanimator matchup is 50-50. Okay, fair enough. The Eldrazi Stomping matchup is very good. Like I said, Painter is just a natural hate card for them and does some real work. So that's nice to see. Apparently Blue-Black Tempo is a 73% matchup. It didn't feel like it when we were on the other end of it. Obviously, very small sample size there. And I don't have enough reps with Painter, certainly not in the current meta, to really know how to best leverage our cards. I suspect 73% is probably going to be more generous. But I guess if you're looking at the field as a whole, sure. I think if you're playing against a good blue-black player, this is going to come down a fair bit. But the fact that it says 73% there is certainly interesting to me. I understand having all these Pyroblasts is pretty good, though. I don't think the Welder itself is particularly good in that matchup, because they're going to have main deck graveyard hate. Like I said, we're catching a lot of strays because of blue-black Reanimator. So if this is what it says as a matchup, then sure. That is basically the reason to play Painter. But let's look at the other matchups. Mono Red Prism, 50-50, okay, a coin flip. Nadu Breakfast, horrible matchup. I think Nadu is going to be a very big player in the meta coming up to Eternal Weekend. I think people have slept on it a little bit, and now they're sort of starting to get their feet with it and playing like the Chord builds and the Zenith builds, as well as Breakfast itself. 10% against Sneak and Show, I don't think that's a deck you're going to see very much. It's very popular in Japan, which is why you see it more represented in Eternal Weekend Asia than you will in other tournaments. Blue-White Control is unfavourable. It's only 5 matches, so take that with a pinch of salt there. But I can certainly see why. They're just going to blow your stuff up, and Wrath of the Skies is such a new tool they have to blow you up. Death and Taxes, we saw that felt miserable, and I think the new Death and Taxes build, the black-white build, is actually good. And if I'd have seen that earlier on, then I might have put that in my 10 decks to watch for the tournament. However, I did not have time. I only saw that deck like yesterday, I think, for the first time. So being bad against that is going to be a problem, especially since that Death and Taxes generally is a very popular deck, especially in paper. So it's probably going to have more representation than you would necessarily expect at an Eternal Weekend. So this is another problem here. Mystic Forge being 50-50, a coin flip. Is that really where you want to be? I don't know. Ant, 12 post. So, you know, having a good Doomsday matchup, though, that seems like a relatively nice thing to have. But basically, the reason to play Painter in the meta right now is these two matchups. How much do you think you are likely to play against these matchups in a tournament? Because you're going to get a couple of freebies, but then you're also going to get, you know, let's say, you know, you play against all of these decks once. Then you're going to end up with a couple that are pretty good for you. But then you're going to end up with a selection here that are really bad for you. So on average, you're probably going to be worse than a coin flip in your overall matchups, which is a little bit worrying. However, Painter does have a lot of utility and rewards play skill and familiarity. A lot of decks in Legacy do. Painter is quite a tricksy one, and when you watch good people like Lightwalker, who I will link in the description, you will see them get a lot more out of the deck. You saw me umming and erring about whether or not I was going to counter a cantrip and stuff. When you watch Lightwalker's channel, you'll see he'll just snap off a thing and immediately know it's the right thing to do at the right time. And it's beautiful to watch. However, this matchup spread is a little bit awkward, but at least your coin flip against all these ones, right? If these are the top 5 decks in the meta and this is all you play against, you know, this is what you're statistically going to be playing against half of the time. I think about half of the meta is represented by these decks or something along those lines. So half of your matchups are coin flip or better. That is good. Your other half of the matchups, you know, maybe you'll play more of these, that's fine, maybe you'll play more of these, but you basically have only one loss to give if you're looking to cash at one of these tournaments. So I think it's a little bit awkward. Now, I was mentioning earlier on that this build is not necessarily the build that I think is the best build. So I'm going to pull up the build that I think is a little bit stronger. So this is a build from Kanakan, who's been playing and doing pretty well with it in a bunch of things, whether it's challenges, leagues, or the special Anurag Dust challenge. So this is the list that they've been playing. So we see no welders here. So we have a card that requires synergy. We've turfed it out, and we've got ourselves more interactions. So we've got the Pyrogoyfs and the Furies in the main. That is a lot. The Engineer, we can go and get a Dragon Engine, so it's very much an engine there. We have the Painted Servant. Cool. This seems like a nice place to be. We have 7 blasts, which is quite a lot. I think that might be slightly too rich for my blood, but I understand why there's so many blasts in the deck. But I think maybe I would look to trim one of these for something myself. We have 1 Lotus Petal, so we've got no Mox Opal here. We've just gone for clean stuff that always works. So again, the Mox Opal is another one of those cards where you need to have the stuff for it to work. We've gone for 1 Lotus Petal, 2 Grindstone, 4 Vexing Bauble, 4 One Ring, 4 Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and then 23 lands. So we're playing more lands, which I like because you're trying to reach the dizzying heights of 4 mana for this One Ring. But then you've also got 2 additional City of Traitors in your mana base. So you have way more ways of making that mana to get you to the One Ring early. And you have a lot more chance of making something like a Fable the Mirrorbreaker or the One Ring on turn 2. So that seems like quite a potent thing to do to me. You also have 10 mountains. So we've got 9 mountains here. So instead we've got 10 mountains and 2 Arena of Glory. Arena of Glory shines quite a bit when you're playing things like Fury and Pyroblast, where you can just absolutely just windmill them at your opponent and crush them with a big chunk of damage. So this deck looks a lot more like the mono-red Stompy deck that just happens to have this Painter's Grindstone combo built into it. I think that is quite an interesting way to take it. The other build that you will see is one with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, but that has even more pieces that are catching strays from Graveyard. So it's very hard to pull off the Agatha's Soul Cauldron combo when everyone's prepared for Blue-Black Reanimator and has like main deck Nile Spell Bombs, Cling to Dust, Endurance, whatever. So I like having access to just cards that are good on their own, right? Pyrogoyf and Fury. And I like having more lands to make that a more realistic thing to cast. The sideboard is relatively clean here as well. It's got things like Damping Sphere to hate on the Mystic Forge. You know, and Snaring Bridge to sit behind if you need it, which is another thing that I like to tutor with the Engineer. There's a lot to like here. What I will say is missing is a piece of main deck Graveyard hate. So I wouldn't mind seeing one of these Red Elemental Blasts becoming a Soul Guide Lantern. That would probably be the change I would like to make before playing this. But like I said, this is basically like the mono-red Stompy deck, except it's got Urza Saga and it's got this Grindstone combo in it. But you've got very similar things going on. No Broadside, but I have seen some painted builds with Broadside. But I think playing a deck which has just got more inherently powerful stuff on their own, because there's so much disruption around at the moment, because people need to disrupt these decks that are absolutely running away with the game. Like if you don't interact with Psychic Frog within one turn cycle, every single turn that goes by, you get further and further behind in a massive way. So people have got lots of interactions. So they're going to be firing off their fatal pushes, their early counter spells, thought seizing you, whatever. Thought seize is certainly taking a tick up in the meta right now as well. So having just cards that are cleaner and do their thing makes a lot of sense to me. And with quite a wide array of card types here, you know, we've got Artifact Creature, we've got Instants, we've got Artifacts, we've got Lands, we've got Enchantments. We might be able to actually have some decent sized Pyrogoyfs as well as what our opponent is putting down, because we're not really going to put lands into our graveyard until the Urza Saga or the City of Traitors dies. So our opponent's lands will certainly help our Pyrogoyfs get large, and copying Pyrogoyfs with Fable the Mirrorbreaker is pretty great. So this is a build that I think is better. It's not exactly where I want to be, but you should also be aware that this build exists. So you have this build, you have the Agatha's Soul Cauldron build, which has Phyrexian Devourer combo. I like the Soul Cauldron as a piece of graveyard hate. The problem is you have to spend quite a lot of cards to make it work in your deck for like your own combo and things, and you just have more dead draws. And as we already discussed today, having too many draws that don't do that much on their own at the moment when everyone is gunning for early interaction is a little bit of a worry in my mind. So how do I feel about Painter's Servant as a deck to play at Eternal Weekend? I think this deck is, again, a deck that if you've got the reps on it, you know, if you're someone like Kanakan or whatever, then you're going to be doing pretty well with a deck like this because you have the reps on it. You know how to tweak your deck for what you think the meta is. So you just make a prediction of what you think the meta is and play the build that you think is going to be best into it. And I think you'll get away okay with this. I think stripping away some of the cards that aren't necessarily as hot on their own would certainly help streamline things. And if we go back to the win rates, it's probably worth remembering that when you're looking at a big tournament like this, a lot of people were probably picking up Painter because Painter has been touted as a deck that's going to be really good into, you know, all these blue decks. So you've got your Blast and it's going to be good into Eldrazi. So the idea is that it's good into the top 3 decks of the format. And, you know, it is good into 2 of these decks. So you're going to see more people picking it up, which is going to actually bring down the win rate in the other matchups because the other matchups are a lot harder to play. So I think if you actually have the reps and you're good with the deck, some of these matchups are going to be a lot higher. Or maybe not even a lot higher, but just higher enough that it's going to be a little bit more comfortable. But I think you have to get a build that you're familiar with because there's so many different builds of Painter. It's such a flexible combo. You know, it's just these colorless things and basically Saga and Engineer, I guess that, and the Fable. So you're kind of looking at, this is like the core of the deck and some number of blasts, and the rest of it is relatively tunable to what you need. And I think there's a real deck building element here that helps you out. But if you really want more information about Painter's Servant and why it's good and how to play it properly, because I'm certainly not the best person to come to if you want to know about playing Painter properly, once again, I would recommend you look at LIGHTWALKE'S channel. They are very good at playing Painter. I believe they've just got a new setup for their mic and stuff as well. And I am no way affiliated with them. I get no kickbacks or money for recommending. I just think that their legacy play, when it comes to Painter, which is basically all they play on the channel, is extraordinary and really worth watching. And if you're remotely interested in Painter, you should definitely be subbed to their channel. It is a great place to be, and they'll probably give you some advice. I know that he plays quite a lot of Karn builds, which is another different way you can take this deck. Instead of going for one rings, you can have things like Karn, and that gives you access to a bunch of other tools. And it's also very good at shutting down these Mystic Forge decks, because you have a one-sided Collect Truth, which is not a bad thing to have when people are doing stuff like that. So there's a lot to think about with Painter. I think your deck has to have these 18 cards in, and the rest of it is relatively flexible. I think you're probably going to want to have at least 3 blasts in your deck, probably more. Let's say 4 blasts minimum. So let's say these 22 cards. This is the core of your deck. This gives you a lot to work around in terms of, I guess you probably also want the Dragon Engineer. Let's say 23 cards. So then you've got another 19 cards that are pretty flexible in what you want to do, what tools you want. I think Vexing Bauble is probably where I want to be at the moment. It just seems like a very powerful thing to do. Obviously, it has a little bit of counter synergy with the Fury, but you get to decide what you're doing with these. A lot of the matchups where you want Fury, you don't really want the Bauble, and vice versa, so this will be cycled, so that's not so bad. But you have 15 to 19 cards where you have quite a lot of flexibility in what you do. Obviously, the mana base, you can do what you want with that. However many mountains, whether you want Sokenzan, how many Arena of Glories, how many City of Traitors, how many Great Furnace, you know, there's a lot of flexibility. So there's very few decks in Legacy, especially big archetypes, that have this much flexibility in how you build them, which I think is what makes Painter one of my favorite decks in the format, to be honest. Like, I'm not great at playing it, but I really admire people who do. I think it's a really sweet deck, and the fact that you have this amount of build flexibility is really cool. And I have been waffling about this for quite some time, but I hope my insights have been relatively useful to you. I think as we've reached the end of our Road to Eternal weekend in terms of my channel, a little recap in terms of what I think is really good in the meta right now. I'm personally very high on the Cephalid Breakfast Nadu deck. I think that deck gets lots of free wins, has good free interaction. It plays the best removal spell in the format in Swords to Plowshares. It has 2 ways of winning the game, so it has redundancy of its bad pieces. So it is running some pieces like Nomads that are just bad, but you have stuff that doubles up on them like your Nadu as well. So there's just so much to like about that deck. That is one of the decks that I would recommend. Obviously, knowing me, I'm a big fan of Turbo Depth. I think if you've got enough reps on Turbo Depth, it's fine. If you've got enough reps on a lot of decks, I think you can take them to Eternal Weekend. Having a deck that you know, like fundamentally, in and out, gives you such a big leg up in this format compared to other formats. You need to consider that when you're deciding what to play. You shouldn't just go to, oh, I think this deck is really good, I'm going to just play this deck. You need to get your reps in. You need to understand how the deck functions into so many different matchups and different sideboarding plans, because sometimes your opponent's sideboarding plan won't be a straight plan. They'll have different dials they can turn depending on how they see you playing, how they want to approach your matchup. And you really need to get your experience and reps in deciding what you play. But I think a deck with Nadu in is a strong shout right now, or a deck that you've got a lot of experience in. That's where I'm sort of pinning my predictions of what should be doing well in this tournament. Now, obviously, you can play the good decks like Blue-Black Tempo, or you can play the Blue-Black Reanimator deck, but I think a lot of people are gunning for Reanimator, and it has fallen by the wayside a little bit in terms of play rate at the top levels. But maybe that means it's due for resurgence, who knows. But that's kind of where my thoughts lie. I prefer this deck to the Mono Red Prison, but I don't necessarily prefer this build. I think I would definitely tweak with it a bit. But if you don't have time to get good with Painter, then I would say stick to what you have experience with and you have enough time to get reps on. Alright, that's quite a big debrief today because it's the end of a 2-week-long series on my channel, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know some feedback that you have. I wish I would have had time to play the Black and White Death and Taxes. I will try and get that on the channel sometime in the next week if I can. I think that deck is surprisingly sweet. I've played against it quite a lot over the last couple of days, and it's absolutely cleaned my clock every time. Actually, that's not true. I think we beat it once, but it seems quite potent. Alright, thank you so much for watching me, and I hope that this series, even though I'm not an expert on all of these decks I'm playing, because, you know, I play a wide variety of things, I don't get the reps in that the actual experts do. But I hope my insight has been useful to you, and it's shown you the things you can expect to see at the tournament, and what you might be wanting to play, and how to tweak things to adjust. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.